Chapter 1870 to Akashic Records. For the entire day, Zhang Yi completely cut off contact with the outside world. Because he knew that there were countless people frantically trying to contact him. They all wanted to know what Zhang Yi went through in the last stage, wanted to get even a little information, and wanted to know what happened to Yichigal in the end. Zhang Yi was only focused on recovering his body and ignored everything else. Those trivial matters are still left to Yang Xinxin to coordinate and manage. The first thing Yang Xinxin did was to make up a perfect story based on what was said on the Chernobyl plane. Fortunately, when others asked about it afterwards, he deceived everyone and made them believe that Yichigal did not show up. It was because after he accepted the inheritance of the Yihan tribe, he probably went to a special space. A day and a night passed in silence. Zhang Yi's injuries were completely healed by Zhou Qi, and he also absorbed part of Ichigal's essence. Now his ability index has skyrocketed by 35,000 points. This number is very shocking because according to past practice, the higher the level of the alien's origin, the slower the absorption rate will be due to the huge amount. But this time, it only took him one day to absorb all of Ichigal's essence. Zhang Yi knew that this was not just an increase in the supernatural power index, because the special power that Yichigal inherited from the Yihan tribe also entered his body. He could feel that he was really different. Zhang Yi changed into his combat uniform. He knew that things were not completely over yet, and he would face more troubles in the future. Things had to be wrapped up. Especially the giant Drucker who appeared at the end brought him a heavy psychological shadow. It would be absolutely foolish to despise everything just because you have become powerful. Even the Yihan tribe, a god-level civilization, had to hide in special space nodes just to avoid being found by the giant god Druk. What's more, I have just inherited their legacy. When Zhang Yi came to the living room, Zhou Qi and Yang Xia had already fallen into a deep sleep. In order to heal his injuries yesterday, both of them had consumed a lot of energy, so he needed to have a good rest. Only Lu Karen was in the living room, tinkering with a mechanical life form. Huahua lazily lay on the armrest of the sofa, closing her eyes and sleeping comfortably. Seeing Zhang Yi coming, he stretched himself, jumped onto Zhang Yi's shoulder, and climbed up by grabbing his shoulder. Zhang Yi held it in his arms, and Huahua rubbed its head into Zhang Yi's arms affectionately, as if it liked the smell of him. Lu Karen turned around and said to Zhang Yi with a smile, "Brother, you are awake. Have you recovered?" Zhang Yi smiled and nodded. Seeing some oil stains on Lu Karen's face, he couldn't help but smiled and said, "Karen, you will be busy for the next period of time. The first thing is the reconstruction of the shelter. The former shelter had been destroyed, with only wreckage remaining. But this is just as well. We can tear it down and rebuild it using the latest technology. However, the workload will be relatively large, especially the manufacturing of special materials, which can only rely on Lu Karen's void transformation. And after that, Lu Karen also needs to upgrade weapons, armor, and protective gear for everyone in the shelter. This is a very huge project. Thanks a lot," Zhang Yi said. Lu Karen smiled and shook his head, looking very happy. "Brother, Karan is now an Epsilon-level mutant. This is not a problem for me. Instead, it is my happiness." She raised her fist and squeezed her brachialis with her other hand. "As a mechanical engineer, it is a huge achievement for me to see myself create masterpieces." Zhang Yi rubbed her head. "Don't work too hard." Lu Kuran smiled and said, "I know." Without looking at Yang Xinxin, he asked, "Why can't I see Xinxin?" Lu Karen said, "Oh, she's next door. I haven't seen her all day. I wonder what she's doing." As she spoke, she pointed to a room to the side. Zhang Yi walked over and knocked on the door. "Xinxin, it's me. Are you in there?" Yang Xinxin's response came immediately. "Brother, the door is not closed." Zhang Yi pushed the door open and walked in. As soon as he entered, he saw floating three-dimensional projections everywhere in the room. There are many messy characters on it from all over the world, of course, including the ancient characters of the Huashu calendar. Zhang Yi asked curiously, "Xinxin, what are you doing?" Yang Xinxin sat on the floor with a soft, thick blanket underneath her. She waved and asked Zhang Yi to sit down. Zhang Yi sat next to her naturally. Yang Xinxin said to Zhang Yi, "Brother, everything I saw yesterday at the Tianyu Palace of the Yihan clan should be the same as what you saw. But the information we obtained was different." Zhang Yi opened his eyes wide. "Why is it different?" Yang Xinxin smiled playfully at Zhang Yi. "Some of the things you said yesterday were different from what I heard. It's not that they tell different stories about the history of the universe. I think they tell the same worldview. That's because before they left this world, they left their stories and the origin of their race for people in later generations to know. They won't tell us information that has nothing to do with them. But if we ask, they will answer. Right?" Zhang Yi touched his nose and said, "That's true. But the time was too short, and I was shocked by the sudden large amount of information, so I didn't ask many questions." Zhang Yi told several people everything he knew yesterday. But Yang Xinxin didn't say anything, because she needed time to verify some things. Yang Xinxin said to Zhang Yi, "The past cannot be changed, but the future is the most important. The Yihan tribe has sealed themselves for hundreds of millions of years, and they only know a rough outline of the development of the world. Therefore, they are not truly omniscient and omnipotent. But they have proved one thing. That is, the existence of angels is indispensable to human beings in the spread of the age of transmission. The civilization of the previous life was guided by Kagawa and passed on knowledge to the next life. In the ignorant period of the species, they may have been restricted by Kagawa and could not tell them all the truth. Therefore, myths are used as a way to remind future generations. From ancient myths around the world, we can find common elements. For example, the Great Flood, the creation of the world from chaos and nothingness, and gods with human and animal characteristics. Those things can now be confirmed to have really existed." Zhang Yi nodded. "I think so too." Yang Xinxin looked at Zhang. "But there is a problem here. If our angels come from our previous life, then why did those underground civilizations try to destroy us in our next life? What's even more puzzling is that they may not even know each other exists. Some underground civilizations want to destroy humanity, while others help us." Zhang Yi rubbed his brows and said, "The envoys of the Yihan tribe didn't say these things. Because from their point of view, these are insignificant matters." Yang Xinxi nodded. "Indeed, I didn't ask this question at the time, because there are indeed more worthy things to ask. But I think that all secrets are hidden in the history and myths of the past. Only by uncovering the secrets of myths can we know everything in the world. However, that would be a huge undertaking and would require a lot of luck. So, I choose to take a shortcut." Zhang Yi's eyes lit up. "Shortcut." Yang Xinxin nodded. "Now we know that some people can predict the future. This also proves that time does exist. And around me, there are people who possess this God-given ability." As she spoke, she looked at Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi pointed at his nose. "Me? But my ability to predict the future is only 3 seconds long. How can it be long enough?" Yang Xinxin said, "So I asked them, what methods can people use to predict the future? Brother, this may be the key to developing your abilities. You have the ability of time and space, and you have done a good job in developing space. That's because people living in the material world can easily understand space. But what about time? Your time ability is improving very slowly, perhaps because you don't understand time well enough." Zhang Yi frowned slightly. "Actually, my ability has improved." "That's not enough." Yang Xinxin looked at Zhang Yi seriously. "If everything is predetermined, then destruction is inevitable on the timeline. We need the ability to foresee the future and change it." "Brother, I think therefore I am. Do you remember what Saint Wang said?" Zhang Yi hesitated for a moment and asked, "Do you have an answer?" "Have." Yang Xinxin replied, "Akashic Records." "What record?" This was the first time Zhang Yi heard the term, and he found it very confusing. Yang Xinxin explained, "The term Akashic Records originated from the myths of the ancient Kermit kingdom and their god of wisdom, Thoth. Akashic Records means the life book of the universe. In Buddhism, It is called Alaya consciousness. The Akashic Records are not a book, nor are they physical entities. Rather, they are like a super memory that covers the entire universe, storing all the information of the entire universe. Everything that happens now, in the past, and in the future is predetermined. A few gifted people can connect to it and obtain information about past lives, past causes and effects, and the future. Throughout history, many people have suspected a connection to its existence and have engaged in behaviors that cannot be explained by science. Among them is the famous modern physicist Nikola Tesla. Yang Xinshin paused. Now it seems that the Akashic Records should be the highest will of Kagago. Brother, do you still remember the dream you often have? Zhang Yi suddenly thought of the fantasy sea he had entered in his dream. The white ocean is full of light, and countless white light spots build a huge world. If there is a supreme will, it will determine everything, the beginning and the end. The will of an individual can affect the local world, but it will eventually be brought back to the world's proper trajectory by Kagawa. Brother Soa, you are the one who can connect to the Akashic Records. As long as we can see everything that is coming through it, even if we can't change the time of human civilization, at least we can protect the people around us as much as possible. And I think that Indra is also the connector of the Akashic Records. Zhang Yi held his lower body with both hands and began to think about this possibility. In the past, he had always been very resistant to everything in his dreams. The mumbling that often appeared in his ears made him feel like a patient. However, this may really be the best way to inspire time ability. Now that I think about it, the improvement of my ability to manage time also started from that time. Yang Xinshin raised her hand and moved over a 3D projection screen. Use modern science to explain ancient theology and metaphysics, and you will find that many things have reasonable explanations. For example, in ancient times, there were objects that were suspected to be connected to the Akashic Records. This is the Tui Bei II left by two Yi scholars during the heyday of the Tang dynasty, Yuan Tiangang and Li Chunfeng. Later generations have proven that it accurately predicted many major events that happened in Huashu country in later generations. Zhang Yi took a look and saw some ancient pictures on it, with prophetic words praising the words. I've heard of this thing in the past, but is it really accurate? They are all classical Chinese, not some far-fetched explanations from later generations. You know, the so-called numerology is mostly used by charlatans to deceive people. Seeing that Zhang Yi didn't quite believe it, Yang Xinshin didn't rush to refute, but smiled faintly. That's indeed possible. But brother, there are a few hexagrams here that anyone who can read can understand. Come and take a look. Zhang Yi's expression looked a little strange. Why does this sound like you're saying you're uncultured? Yang Xinshin switched to a hexagram and Zhang Yi looked over. The picture of the hexagram shows a boat sailing on the water with 8 flags on it, and a group of people are coming by boat. The prophecy below says, "The yellow river is clear. If the qi is smooth, the disease will be cured. There is no distinction between host and guest. There is no in the earthly branches." Song says, "The white waterfall comes from the sky. The Hu people are not angry. Many of the vassal states were withdrawn. The childishness is pitiful." Note, quoted from Tui Bei II, author, Yuan Tiangang Li Chunfeng. Yang Xinshin looked at Zhang Yi with a slightly amused look in her eyes. Brother, just guess what this means literally. Zhang Yi pointed at the pictures and words above. This is too obvious, right? Qing, Xuanji, not distinguishing between host and guest, saying that the minister rebelled and proclaimed himself king. Isn't this the Qing army entering the past to replace the Ming? Even the title of the first emperor of the Qing dynasty was written out. The Changbai waterfall is coming. The ancestral line of the Jurchens is the Changbai mountain. Most of the vassal states have been withdrawn, and Wu and Gui will open the pass to let the Jurchens in. Zhang Yi looked at Yang Xinshin in disbelief. Are you sure this thing is not compiled in modern times? Yang Xinshin said calmly, there have been many interpretations since ancient times, so it can't be false. And brother, you overlooked a key point. She pointed and said, go look at that painting. Zhang Yi looked at the picture carefully again. Any questions? Count the number of flags on the ship. Zhang Yi counted carefully and found that it was neither more nor less. There are exactly 8, corresponding to the 8 banners of the Qing dynasty. Yang Xinxin smiled and asked, "Do you believe it now?" Zhang Yi rubbed his chin. It's not a matter of whether to believe it or not. This Tui Bei too may have been forged in modern times. I still feel it's a bit fake. Even as an alien, the most powerful prophet he had ever seen was Emperor Shirtian, but Emperor Shirtian could not see so far into the future and see it so clearly. Yang Xinxin smiled as if she had expected it. I knew you would say that. But there is a fact that can prove it. That is, Jin Xingtan, a famous scholar in the Qing dynasty, once interpreted the Tui Bei Tuesday. In other words, the timeline of the Tui Bei too must be before the Kangxi period of the Qing dynasty. Zhang Yi nodded. Could it be that what happened after the Qing dynasty was also predicted in such a simple and straightforward way? If you say it vaguely, I won't accept it. After all, the interpretation of text requires skill. Yang Xinxin said, "Take another look at this." She then showed Zhang Yi the second hexagram. The hexagram is still the first picture because it was drawn with a brush, so it looks a bit sloppy. Water and reeds could be vaguely seen, and below them lay several tangled corpses. Below are prophecies and eulogies. The prophecy says, "If you have hair on your head, you're afraid of white clothes. In times of peace, kings kill kings." Song says, "Blood is flying again in Taiping. 5 colored patches make the lining and outerwear." The flood was overwhelming and no seedlings grew. The Central Plains had seen a completely different dream. When Zhang Yi saw this, he was silent for a while. This paragraph is too simple. Anyone who has studied middle school history and can read can understand what it is talking about. The head has hair, which is related to the hair-growing movement of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, so the Taiping army was also called the long-haired thieves at that time. During the Taiping period, kings killed kings, referring to the civil strife in the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. However, the most obvious thing is the eulogy, where the words Taiping and Hong Xiuquan are written directly and plainly. Zhang Yi really couldn't help but believe it. It's incredible. Zhang Yi took a deep breath. It's been more than 1,000 years since the heyday of the Tang dynasty. How could people back then be able to see what's happening now? Don't you say that fate is irreversible? Yang Xinxin nodded. The general trend of history is difficult to change. The Supreme Okagago will correct everything. This is why, even if the underground civilization reached the level of civilization of the Aihen tribe, which was stronger than the human civilization of this generation, it was eventually destroyed, and only the remnants remained underground. There are 50 great ways. 40 of them are derived from the heavens, and only one can be evaded. Only those of us who possess the ether fragments are the only variables. If one of them escapes, it means that only a very small number of people will survive the disaster in the end. Yang Xinxin stared at Zhang Yi with scorching eyes, her obsidian eyes actually flashing with extreme excitement. Brother, isn't this a lot like Battle Royale? All we have to do is be the last survivor. So, I'm going to help you connect to the Akashic Records. See it, and let yourself avoid the fate of destruction. Zhang Yi touched his nose. But I want to escape from this dangerous place now. Well, we need to speed up and let Quran improve our technology level and build a safe shelter. No. Should I say a shelter base? Yang Xinxin said to herself, we need to find a time to have a good chat with Emperor Shirtian. A day later, Zhang Yi is now at his best. On the surface, he was a white bishop-level supernatural being with an ability index of 35,000 points, but inside, his potential had been greatly improved. Especially in the world behind the light gate, the dual skills of time and space, moment of blue sky and sin of blasphemy, are awakened to make up for the biggest weakness, the ultimate skill to kill the game. Although the conditions for using these two abilities are relatively harsh, there will also be great side effects. But if used at critical moments, it can achieve unexpected results. Zhang Yi brought the people around him back to the location of Tianhai Fortress, and all the people in Tianhai City gathered here according to Zhang Yi's instructions. Tens of thousands of people, all elites in various fields. Tens of thousands may not be a lot, but when they all stood on the vast snowfield, the visual impact was still very spectacular. It feels like there are mountains and plains everywhere. Deng Shentong and others had been waiting for Zhang Yi here for a long time and hurried over to greet him. Your Majesty. Deng Shentong smiled and called Zhang Yi's title in Tianhai City. In order to ensure Zhang Yi's absolute majesty, Yang Xinxing planned to govern the tens of thousands of people in Tianhai City in the form of religion. Therefore, Zhang Yi had to be deified, and even calling him by his name was not allowed. There are so many people outside. Deng Shentong also has to give face to Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi nodded. After Deng Shentong approached, a strange look suddenly flashed in his eyes, and a stunned expression filled his handsome face. You have become stronger again? The more powerful the alien, the sharper its spiritual perception. According to the Yihan tribe, every person is an incarnation of ether, so they all have spiritual perception and can detect strong people. After Deng Shentong approached Zhang Yi, he suddenly felt his heartbeat speed up and even his breathing became rapid. That is the instinctive reaction when facing a powerful and dangerous creature. Nonsense. There can't be no progress at all, right? That would be a waste of time. Zhang Yi said lightly. Deng Shentong. Amomum velocum pig heart. This time I went back to Fremon's, but I didn't get much benefit. After all, those who were killed were mechanical life forms, but those mass-produced machines were not demon god machines, and there was no original matter at all. What the hell is the improvement? After finally entering the light gate, the battles he experienced were not real life and death, so his current strength has not improved at all. Zhang Yi saw how embarrassed he was, patted him on the shoulder, and said, I'll give you a lot later. You can go back to Blizzard City first. I'm going to rebuild Tianhai Fortress next. Deng Shentong shook his head and said firmly, I won't leave. I also want to see to what extent you can develop the power of Tianhai City. What I am most curious about are actually the mechanical life forms captured by Zhang Yi. A rough estimate shows that there are about 100,000 mechanical life forms in Zhang Yi. Even if we can repair 1/10 of it, we can have tens of thousands of powerful mechanical soldiers. By then, Deng Shentong might have to consider leaving Blizzard City and living in Tianhai City.